welcome to this episode of Martial Truth. My interview with Robert Redfeather. Robert Redfeather is a Chiricahua Apache, teaches Apache knife fighting techniques along with the lance tracking. He makes his own leather goods. He's head of a charitable organization that you can donate to that benefits a lot of different people. So all that info, links to his website, links to his book, will be in the description details. Okay, he's joined by his student Robin John, who's a longtime student of his in Apache knife fighting. Robin's also going to be a future guest on the podcast because he studies the Celtic fighting traditions. All right, so we'll be talking to him about that. As always, if you're enjoying the podcast, please click that like, share, subscribe button. Consider becoming a monthly member. A lot of videos there that are only for the members to the channel. Just as an aside, I've not been able to film some videos the last couple of weeks. I tore my hamstring a few weeks ago, so I'm letting that kind of heal up. Just a fluke thing. I mean, I'm back to training, but I just can't do some of the things the way I normally do them. So probably in the next week or so, I'll start filming some new videos, and I'll get some other videos up in the meantime. All right. So again, sit back, enjoy this interview. A lot of interesting insights into the Native American culture. And here's my interview with Robert Redfeather. Robert Redfeather, welcome to the Martial Truth podcast. This is Robin Price, correct? One of your longtime students. So lucky enough to have both of you guys here. Robert's the founder, I believe, of the Apache Knife Fighting System. You're a Chiricahua Apache, I believe. That's your
Yes,
ancestor?
and my mother's Lapan from Texas as well.
Okay. So why don't you introduce yourself, talk a little bit about your background, how you came about with this system, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. Well, thank you for the introduction. It's good to be here. My name is Robert Redfeather. I'm a Apache, also Chiricahua Mosquitero from New Mexico. And my mom's Lapan Apache, which is the Sun Otter Band out of Texas. And with me today is
Robin Price.
Well, you look on the camera. Robin John Price was one of my students for 9 years as a chief instructor in Apache Knife.
Okay.
You're the chief instructor.
No, I used to be.
So how did you go? So this system that you created or developed, so when you were younger, were you taught, were there techniques you were taught by your relatives? Or, were you part of a specific tribe where you were involved? Because I know you also, I believe, teach tracking, right?
Yes, this is correct.
So were you in the military also?
No, I was a government contractor for the military, and that's the mistake everybody makes.
Okay. Because in the photos, I saw a couple of photos of you, and it looked like, oh, he must have been in the military. So, okay, you were
military training, teaching the military, yeah.
Okay. So what did you teach the military?
Combat tracking and knife defense.
Okay. So where did you learn to track?
I learned from my grandparents.
Okay.
From my grandfather, actually, out of Arizona.
Okay.
That's a long, good story as well.
Okay. So let's hear it.
Yeah. So my grandfather used to, when we were kids, we would always play around on the res. And we look for animals, horses, and of course we'd play hide and seek with each other. We would look for one another. Because the dirt's pretty good. It's red and it's clay, and it's a lot of fun to do.
Well, that's where I am. I'm sitting in Arizona right now.
Oh, okay. Then
most of my life I lived in New York. We moved out here 5 years ago, and I can attest to the dirt being red and the dirt being very hard out here in Arizona anytime I go to plant something. So
what part of Arizona?
So I'm in Whitman, which is just outside of Phoenix. So I'm not in Phoenix. I'm just outside of Surprise, actually. That's the closest big city between Surprise and Wickenburg.
I'm originally from Arizona, born in Phoenix. So
okay. Yeah, Whitman's very small. That's what we like. I have about 1.25 acres out here. The building I'm sitting in right now is my school. I had it built and delivered, so my school's on my property.
Sweet.
The greatest thing in the world, believe me when I tell you. I walk off my back porch, I come out here and I can do this, or I can train, or whatever I want to do. So you were in a reservation. Which reservation?
This was, I knew you were going to ask me that.
Okay.
It was Kayenta. It's in actually Arizona and Utah by Willamette Valley.
Navajo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I thought I said that.
No, Navajo Rest.
Yeah, out there. And So I had a lot of good times there. I was there every summer. I lived there for about 4 years, and after that, I'd go back every summer. So back to the tracking. After my grandfather taught me and do some tracking, after a couple of years, I met maybe 20 years ago. I met a sniper who wanted me to teach him tracking. So I
Okay.
was teaching him. Then he went back to his unit and told him about me. And they said, "Well, who's this guy? Why is he teaching you?" He says, "Well, he learned from his grandfather." And then the guy said, "Well, who's his grandfather? That's not good enough."
Right,
So he
right,
came back and told me they want me to take one of their courses so I could be certified to teach the military. And I said, "Sure, okay, that sounds
right.
like a lot of fun." So I did that, went to the course, and saw everything what they were doing. So we had the spooks there, the army was there, the Marines there, also the border patrol was there. It was huge. And after the course, I had a good time. Everybody was asking why I was there because I knew what I was doing. I passed the course, and I told them because I needed your certificate so I could be certified to teach. So
So
that's how it started.
so it's funny. I have a similar thing. So I was a transit cop, a New York City transit police officer. So I was
Okay.
in the transit police for 17 of my 22-year career. But when I first got into transit police, one of my friend was an FBI agent, and he would teach the FBI defensive tactics instructors course. So obviously the feds. So he says to me, "Hey, in our curriculum, we don't have any handcuffing techniques for a guy that doesn't cooperate." Which is
Uh,
weird, right? Like
yeah,
Yeah.
I looked at him and said, how could you not have techniques if the guy, because virtually when you're a street cop, most people don't cooperate, right?
all the
So he
time.
goes, "Could you come to my next weekly class and could you teach the techniques you have for cuffing criminals?" And I said, "Sure." So I kind of did the same thing. The first one I went to, I spent a week there. I taught the one day and I took the rest of the week's class so I could get the certificate. Very similar to what you did. And I also ran into like the one time I went to help him, and he said to me, "Oh, we have a bunch of guys here from that are holdovers from Hoover days, J. Edgar Hoover. So these
Wow.
are a little bit older." And he's like, "Yeah, they're not going to probably like that you're here because you're an outsider." And I was like, "All right." And then I started showing stuff, and the one guy came over, and I showed him that it worked. And at the end of the day, he came over to me. He says, "Hey, I'm teaching a class next week. Do you think you could come in the one day and help me out?" And I said, "Sure." So it's interesting, right? So you kind of had the same thing where you knew what you were doing, but you got to get that certificate,
Yep.
right?
I went to
Just
four classes, four classes to get that certificate.
right.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question. What does tracking entail? Like is it again as a layman, is it looking for things within, especially if it's in nature, is it looking for things that don't belong, whether it be a broken branch, something that just doesn't seem right? I mean, what are you looking for when you're looking to track someone?
Well, tracking is a huge story. It's like a puzzle, and you're
Okay.
always looking for something, like you said, what don't belong there. But with nature, everything belongs there. You just
Right.
have to look for things that are kind of odd.
Right.
And the more you do it, your eyes get used to it, and you get used to it, looking for clues. But the biggest thing is knowing the terrain.
Okay.
These days people are using drones now, they're using dogs, they're
Right.
using horses, use a lot of modern things for tracking. And I like to call that sheep herding, because what they're doing is pushing the person forward so the officers up ahead can catch them.
Right.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I like it because it's fun. I used to do it with the animals when I was younger, but I don't do that anymore. Now I just look for people.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you were teaching these classes, is that what you would do? Would you send out a guy and they would have to track him, or would it be something different?
You want to tell them how we do the class? I taught Robin.
Yeah, so sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely man tracking.
Okay.
And the very first one I attended, he'd show us the footprints and how they might look if he's walking backwards, if he's walking forward,
Okay.
if he's turning, how to. Eventually, we got to where we could fast track. First, you're looking for every single print, even if it's just maybe a little piece of a toe. But eventually, you get to the point where you can look ahead and see the tracks going up ahead, depending on the terrain, of course. Sometimes It just disappears for about 100 yards,
Right.
and you have to go. Okay, well, he was going in this direction. Let's check up there and see if we can pick it up.
Right.
But yeah, it's the little things. If and there's different things that you would look for as opposed to like the Arizona desert,
Right.
uh, or if you're in the jungle or in the forest, things that don't really you can walk and there's no track.
Right.
So then you're
Right.
going to have to look for the other little things. I'm retired LA County Sheriff.
Okay.
So I worked at the high desert, and sometimes we would track people
Right.
across the desert after they'd broke into a house.
Right.
On the desert, it's easy because it's leaving really good prints.
Right.
But if they're going across gravel or walking up a pavement,
Disappears.
lose it. Yeah.
But the answer to the question, the way I teach them, I call it shadowing. I'll have them walk, I'll walk in front of them and they follow me. And their eyes are supposed to watch my footprints, how I step,
Okay.
and how the mistakes I'm moving. And so they're seeing me turning right, turning left, kneeling down. I'll roll on the ground. I show them different scenarios. So they're actually watching me.
Okay.
And then once they're learning, I have somebody go ahead. I'll have Robin track that person, and I'm following with Robin to see how he's tracking to make sure he's doing it correctly. So the different scenarios is I'll give you an hour to find me. If you don't find me in an hour, you do not pass.
Right.
Sometimes I'll give them 2, sometimes I'll give them 3, and then sometimes I give them with partners, and then we have night tracking as well. Night's pretty fun and it's kind of hard at night, but when
Right.
you use the flashlight, it makes everything pop.
Yep.
Right.
And so people do like tracking at night.
So what? So let me ask you a question. When you're taught this skill by your grandfather, did he also teach you how to avoid being tracked?
He did, but that's
Okay.
something totally different. And I won't teach people to evade. Evading tracking is a whole different ballgame.
But I'm saying within your culture, obviously this was an important thing.
Yeah, it is.
I mean,
And
whether you were,
people,
go ahead.
when
No, go
other
ahead.
people don't realize, we're on all social tracking is you let the horse. If you're on a horse, the horse will find the other horse through smell.
Right.
So if you're looking to catch wild horses, you just have your horse lead the way,
Right.
and he'll lead you to the other horses. But when I'm getting to that is when you're tracking as well, when they're on horse, you have your horse lead you.
Okay. So I was
sure.
in the my last 5.5 years, I was in the NYPD intelligence division.
Mhm.
So to give you an idea, the person who headed the intelligence division at the time was an ex-CIA spook.
Okay.
So I had to go to a class where we had to follow a guy. So as though he was a terrorist and
Mhm.
we were watching him. And it was a guy who was just gotten out of the military, expert in this area. And we did this in the middle of New York City. And we had multiple teams tracking this guy. You know, he's going this way, he's down in the subway, he's doing this, he'd go into a building. Now he comes out, he changes clothes. And now
Mhm.
he's even like the guy really knew how to throw us off. And it was very interesting. I mean, it's different from what you were doing,
Mhm.
but because our goal was to always have him in sight because if he's the terrorist and he's planning on doing something, we don't want to lose sight of the guy,
Oh, I
right?
see.
Because then
Right.
he can do what he wants to do, right? But
Absolutely.
it was fascinating, and it was amazing how even though it was not real, I mean, the stress and the intensity because, you don't want to lose that. You don't want to be the guy that loses them, right? So we were using cars. I mean, he got on a bus at one time. It was just crazy as we tried to stay, keep this guy under surveillance. And it was very, very difficult. So he was doing what you said you won't teach. He's trying to avoid us keeping an eye on him and trying to fool us where we completely lose him. And we did. A couple of our guys did eventually lose the guy. He was that good. But but it's fascinating to do that in the city,
Yeah.
you
Oh, yeah.
know.
You don't realize your eyes get tired because you're looking
Oh,
at reflections,
yeah.
you're looking at mirrors, you're looking
Yeah.
at water,
Yeah.
you're
And you're
looking
trying to
at
make
all
him
these
not see you.
clues. City. Yeah.
Yeah, you're trying to make him not notice you, you know.
Yep.
Yeah, it was very, very
And
difficult.
then when he's running from you, you're looking at people's expressions, you're looking for people screaming,
Right. Right.
noises, dogs, birds.
Right.
Yeah, it's a mess.
And it's funny you mentioned about the modern technology because even I've been retired. As a matter of fact, April 30th, I was retired 15 years.
Okay.
And even me when I was still in transit, so we're going back, 25 years ago when I was in transit. We'd chase guys and we'd chase them into a field that might have high weeds, you know. So we'd surround the field and they'd bring the dog in. They'd bring the dog in and the dog would go in and find the guy, or they'd have the helicopter above with the heat that could pick up the guy's
Oh
heat
yeah,
signature,
absolutely.
and the guy in the helicopter's directing us where to go. It's amazing the new technology with it, what
Yep.
they can do
Now
with
they
the
use that
technology.
drones now for all
Yeah,
that.
the drones, same
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, same thing. I actually teach a guy in India who has a drone company in the UK and a drone company in India. So
I
yeah,
have a lot of fun when I teach my courses. I like them. Well, when some people do come to my course and they're pretending they don't know what they're doing,
right,
and they know. And I'm looking like, why are you in my class? Because they want to see if I actually know.
right,
So they're making things up. Oh, here's a track. What are you looking at? That's not a
right,
track.
right. Oh, so
So people
they're
will, yeah, they're
testing you a
testing
little
me.
bit. Yeah.
Yeah. I hate when people do that,
Yeah.
but
Well,
they're easy to spot.
right. Well, I think, look, everybody's an expert in everything. That's one of the problems in the modern world, right?
Yeah.
You see it all the time. I mean, just the trolling on the internet, the comments people make. It's like, my one son played professional baseball, right? Um, so I know how hard it is. And my son would always say to me, "Hey, Dad, the guys on the other team, they're playing to win too. I know you want us to win every game, but their job is to win too, right?"
Yeah.
And again, when I'm watching sports, I get aggravated at my team, even though I know how hard it is because I had a son that played the game, right? So it's just funny, right? So and I sit there and I'm like, yeah, okay, the other guy's pretty good, so I should kind of take a step back here, but we get caught up in stuff, right? So now with the knife fighting, where did you learn that originally, or who introduced you to that?
My grandfather did, and the reason
Okay,
why he taught me is because I want to make the story kind of short. I got stabbed in the foot
okay,
for the first time, and when I came home, my grandfather was making fun of me because I had my leg all stitched up and bandaged, and he goes, "What happened to you?" I said, "Oh, I got stabbed in the foot," and the guy called me. He said he was a crow. I said I was an Apache, and then he pushed me, and I pushed him. Then I went to kick him. Then he stabbed my foot, and
okay,
I didn't want nothing more to do with him.
right,
And my grandfather laughed and he says, he wasn't telling you he was a crow. He was telling you he was from Crow Village. It's a
okay,
gang out there. And
okay,
I laughed. I didn't know that. So he says, follow me through the kitchen. And we went through the backyard, took a tree branch broken in half, and he told me to attack him. Well, I got one good foot.
right.
I told him, no, I ain't going to attack you. You're my grandfather. He hit me a couple times and got me mad. So I attacked him and he just beat me down. And at that time, I was a black belt in martial arts.
Okay.
And I couldn't figure out why I couldn't touch him.
Okay.
And I asked what he was doing. He says, Apache knife. And it's about time you learn. He says, but if I teach you, you cannot teach anybody. And I said, okay, I can do that. And that's how I learned from my grandparents.
So what did you train in? What martial art did you train in first?
Well, it's different. I did Chinese boxing,
Okay.
Chinese wrestling, American boxing, wrestling,
Okay.
Kimpo, Chirinji Kimpo, judo,
Okay.
Hapkido. Like everybody else, you're looking for the Holy Grail.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
Listen, I
So,
teach I teach several arts.
yeah.
And when in the New York school, I taught 6 arts. Out here
Okay.
right now, I'm teaching 4, but I train in 5 or 6 because I some of the ones I don't teach, I still train in. Um, and it's funny, depending on where I go in the world for a seminar, one country I'm thought of more as this particular art, another one I'm thought of this art. So yeah, I mean, I like martial arts. That's probably one of my problems, right?
Oh, yeah.
I just like
Yeah.
I
But
just
the other
like
promise
martial
I
arts.
made to my grandfather was I couldn't add any martial arts to Apache knife. And I still
Okay,
keep that promise today because we don't want it to be soup. He wanted it to be pure. He
right,
didn't want to mix up with anything else.
right,
So I gave up when I started, when I had my own school in city of Buena Park in California. I was teaching martial arts, but I didn't teach Apache knife.
okay,
And then one day I had a seminar there from another school who was doing some knife training. And then I was snickering a lot. And then he asked me, can you do better? And I said, well, no. He goes, would you like to try it? I said, sure. So I was beating the guys, I was winning, and he asked me what I was doing. And I told him, and he asked me, why don't I teach? I says, no, I don't teach anybody how to kill. Why would I teach that?
Right.
You know, and the one of the guys, his name was Sergeant Tanner in the Marine Corps. He kept bugging me to teach him, and he was out of San Diego on the Marine base there. And then finally, he became a student of mine. And then 3 months later, he kept every day kept bugging me. Finally, I said yes.
He wore you down.
I'll teach you guys. So I went to the Marine base, taught about 30 Marines, and I got hooked. The Marine newspaper was there. They did an article on me, you know, wrote up. It was pretty good. And then ever since then, I became a government contractor and started teaching the Marines.
So in terms of the knife you guys use, so in the videos I've seen, the knife is a pretty big knife. So could you describe the knife? And one of the things I'm curious about is historically, was the knife that the Apache used, or you know, was it metal? Was it, you know, was it the stone? What was it historically? What was it made from?
I'll answer that, then I'll let Robin answer that as
Okay.
well. I don't know why people think Native people are like caveman people. I don't know why people think that. Geronimo, his knife was a double blade, and his
Okay.
was a Bowie knife as well. When
Okay.
Geronimo used his knife, my knife is
K-bar.
it is a K-bar because I teach the Marines, but I don't really have a favorite knife, but
Okay.
I prefer a Bowie knife.
Okay.
I prefer a knife that has a good guard, in the rear have a slightly curved or a coffin handle so I can pull out.
Right.
The blade, I like the blade to be at least 9 inches long if I can,
Okay.
or 8. If it's a pocket knife, at least 5,
Okay.
because the length does matter. It gives you more reach.
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
that.
And I don't think that that they were cavemen, but I'm saying, like, if you go way back, obviously they didn't know how to do metallurgy. So they're you know, I
Sure
mean,
about that?
well,
Well,
I'm not sure. You tell me. That's why you're on.
Go
So,
ahead, I'll let you
educate
answer
me.
that, Robin.
so remember that the Apache have been dealing with the Spanish for about 400 years.
Okay.
You know, they came up early, and immediately any of the natives, as soon as they came in contact with metal weapons,
Oh, they wanted them.
yes,
Oh,
yeah.
100%. Right.
immediately started trading. Before that, they used obsidian blades. It could be antlers just for stabbing.
Right.
They had a variety of weapons that they used that were very effective.
Oh, obsidian's crazy
Super
sharp.
sharp.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, the knives that different Native Americans used depended on who they were trading with, you know, the Spanish, the French, the English. And basically it was just like today, you know, I've been carrying a knife since I was a kid. Everybody had a knife on them.
Right.
Because, you know, a camp knife is something that you can use to, you know, skin an animal,
Right.
cut up stuff, just like we use a pocket knife for.
Right.
So, you know, the natives and especially Apaches, since they've been dealing with Europeans for so long, the metal blade became part of the system, how they fought.
Especially with swords. We'll take broken swords and we'll make knives out of them.
Okay.
Spears.
Or spears
Right.
as well with the swords. And
Now,
we
did
also
they-
had an Apache who was a blacksmith in Mexico. So there is some Apaches who were blacksmiths.
So
as
that's
well.
that's what I wanted to get to. I was curious as to did them being introduced to the metal weapons, did that also then make them want to learn how to make them themselves?
We also use covered wagons, you know, in the middle around
Sure.
the wagons.
Sure.
We would use that.
Okay.
Or pots, or
Okay.
pans, spoons. Anything was metal was hard enough to shape or form a knife.
Okay.
Besides just using a regular stone,
Right.
or like he was saying, you know, deer horns or whatever.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Especially with a
And,
rifle. A lot of Apaches have different rifles.
Oh, sure. Well,
You
listen,
know?
look, it's always the same thing. I mean, if the one thing the history of the world has taught us is that sadly we're very good at killing each other, right?
Yes.
And we're very good at coming up with more and more superior ways of killing each other, right? And you know, obviously, you see as the rifle came into greater use, obviously, they're going to want to use rifles, right? I mean, it's just the way. I mean, when I started as a police officer, I don't know, Robin, if you were in the same boat, did you start with a revolver or did you start with a semi-auto?
Revolver.
Yeah, I started with a revolver. And then we got to a point in the early 1990s where these guys all had semi-autos and they have Mac 10s and the chief of the transit police said, "This is nonsense. I'm giving my guys 9 millimeters." So we were given superior weapons. So again, even and you'll see like in law enforcement, even you'll see where sometimes they're a little slow to react. Like the criminals have the better weapons first, and then they're forced to give them to us because they don't want to spend the money, right?
And Native Americans during the Indian Wars of the West, they would usually get the better rifles than the cavalry had because they could just buy them from traders and people bringing them in.
Right.
Whereas, government, you have to get all this approval and they got to
Right.
buy a lot of it.
Right.
And
Yeah, and government's cheap. They want to spend money on nonsense. But as far as having the best weapons for their military, you know what? This is good enough. We'll just give them this stuff.
Yeah, my experience, my first weapon was a 45. It was my grandfather's
Okay.
during World War II. He was
Okay.
an MP, so I got to shoot his, and I got hooked on a 45 ever since.
I carry a 45.
Yeah,
Since I retired, I carry a 45. I have a couple of them. The one I carry is whatchamacallit?
1911.
Springfield. Springfield.
Springfield. Okay.
And when I worked as a skip tracer, that's all I used was a 45 on the job.
Okay. Yeah, and the transit police, we carried Glocks. So we carried the Glock, which is a great gun for combat. I mean, the Glock, you can sharpen a knife on the slide of a Glock. So, did you know that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's really, and the guy that created it, what was he? He was a tool maker. He was
Amazing
a tool
how things
maker.
work out.
Yeah, it's crazy. So what would you say are some of the key points within Apache knife fighting?
Well, first of all, let me explain what Apache knife really means.
Okay.
The philosophy behind it. Apache means people, men, or the enemy. It's a Zuni word for enemy.
Okay.
So Apache knife means the enemy of the knife. So it's the enemy's knife, not because I'm an Apache,
Right.
because it's a knife. It's the enemy's knife you're learning during battle how to wield the blade during wartime. So the philosophy means the enemy's knife. So that's what Apache knife means.
Okay.
Okay. Unless we got that straight. And then you were asking me, I forgot what you were actually asking.
I said, what are some of the characteristics of the method that you would say?
Everybody has trouble during our class with what? Footwork, walking. Everybody has trouble walking during our course because we don't hold our ground. That's what makes us different from any other knife fighting. We don't hold our ground. We cut, we move, we cut, we evade, we cut, we move. I make you come in. It looks like I'm attacking you, but I'm stepping back as I'm stabbing or cutting. I'm never really in front of you, either to the right or the left of you. For an instance, if I was to lunge, I would step first, lunge, but move to the right or left. It's not a full lunge.
Okay.
We call that earth, meaning you're stuck on the ground.
Okay.
So our feet work is very light on the toe and on the heel, almost like you're marching, or if you're in the military, like clearing a room. You're gliding through the room as you're clearing the room. Same thing with knife fighting. You don't want to be heavy on your feet. That's what makes us different from all the rest.
Okay. It's interesting because once I began to have a lot of fighting experience for real, New York City transit cops work alone. So you were often engaging more than one adversary, and New York in the late '80s and early '90s was just not a very safe place. But I learned really quick, having studied karate and jujitsu, that a lot of the karate the footwork I'd been being taught in karate was way too stiff. Way too stiff.
Very linear.
And in the street as well. It's not controlled.
And it's interesting. I do Ishinru karate, which the stances are very natural, so we don't have those deep, wide stances.
Okay.
But in researching some of the early pioneers of karate, when they talk about footwork, it's more similar to what you're talking about, or what I now talk about in my class, which is the ability to move the feet.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at a boxer, right? And you put two boxers, and all said and done, they're equal. two things are going to make the one guy better: if his footwork's better, and if his conditioning's better, right? And I think in modern martial arts, and my Tai Chi master has said this: modern martial artists, their feet are way too slow. The feet should be faster than the hands.
Yes.
And so, when, in the arts I teach, I try to get people to get that footwork fast. And I was looking at some of the videos where you're doing basic stuff, but I could see the way you're shifting and, like, again, that kind of angle, starting to come from the outside change. So I see what you're talking about.
Yes, but when people make the mistake, once they get out of the way or evade a punch or attack from the right or the left, they evade, but they stop.
Right.
When we evade, we don't stop. We're still
Right.
moving.
Right.
Because if that person was to step once or twice, then you're still in reach.
Right.
So you have to make sure you're clearing him and you're clearing the weapon as well.
Right.
And when people hold their ground because out of pride, that's how they get strike or get killed, because out of pride. They're holding their ground too much.
So with the Apache knife fighting, would you say a thrust is more prevalent, or would you say slashing is more prevalent, or it's irrelevant? It's either or. It's whatever needs to be done at the particular time you're doing it.
I can answer, then I'll let Robin answer that. The
Okay.
first thing we always do is we attack the knife hand, because I'm not teaching people how to kill.
Right.
I'm not teaching them to be assassins. So
Right.
I want them to get rid of the threat, then I want it to be over. So we're always stabbing or cutting the hand itself, cut those tenets of the back of the hand so the hands will lock up so they can't wield the blade. That's what I teach them. And then you want to add anything to that?
So basically we teach committed and non-committed. So
Okay.
non-committed is what we basically teach most people, because civilian, we see so many videos where it's like the martial art guy, he disarms the guy and then he stabs him or cuts his throat, and it's like, wait. You can't do that.
No.
So, stop the threat. Once the threat is stopped,
then it's over with.
Then it's over, and you either get out of there or call the police or something.
Yeah.
Now, when we teach the Marines,
different.
Different story.
Yeah.
Right.
So committed or non-committed.
Right.
And you may have to transition to committed depending on the circumstances on the street.
Right.
But ideally, we just want to wound them enough to say, hey, you should go get that taken care of.
But a lot of people were teaching a martial artist, and it's hard for them to stop. So we train them when they fight and the knife falls out of their hand, they're supposed to back off.
Right.
But they don't want to, because they're used to keep doing it till they cannot move.
Well, it's funny. I teach a lot of weapons defense in both my karate classes, even Tai Chi. In my Tai Chi classes, I teach weapons defense. And I'll have teenagers, right? And I always teach that, when you get control of the weapon, don't in the class leave the weapon in the opponent's hand. You always make sure when you're done, you have the weapon. Now they can't do anything. They can't use that weapon against you. But a lot of times the teenagers, when they first start and they take the guy down, they get the knife, and what do to the guy when he's on the ground? They start stabbing him.
Yeah.
Right? So then I always go, okay, time out. All right, everybody up. All right, so you disarmed him. He's on the ground. And now you proceed to start stabbing him. And everybody in this day and age has what? Everybody's got a video camera, right? We got that cell phone, right? And you went from being the good guy to being the bad guy.
Yeah.
And it's something I think a lot of martial arts schools do not spend any time on. And I personally have a huge problem with it. It's something like I make sure I explain. Like I'll teach some techniques that would be considered lethal, right? Okay. But when would you do this? You'd only do this if it was a last resort. You don't have any other choice. You have to. I mean, depending on that situation.
It's because a lot of people are not aggressive, so they're teaching civilians and people how to be aggressive to turn around.
Right.
So even though you're attacking me, I turn around and now I'm attacking you.
Right. Right.
That's why they do that.
Right.
But in our situation, we have to teach them, we never step forward during a knife fight. We step back.
Okay.
So that way the cameras all around you always show we're not the aggressive. We're actually moving away from you.
Right.
Trying to figure out a way out to escape as well.
And it is interesting because I know you say you cut for the hand, but in most weapons fighting, the hand's the closest thing to the opponent. So a lot of times that's going to be your target. I know in the Okinawan systems, it's the same thing. We go for the hand. It's the closest thing to us.
Yeah.
And I did an active shooter uh, class where I was asked to be an observer by the commissioner for a small town police department that I was working for. And they went in in some of the situations, the bad guy had a hostage, but he'd point his gun at the police officer. And it was amazing how many times the police officer, we used simunitions, right? So the rubber bullets.
Okay.
It was amazing how many times the police officer shot the gun, hit the gun or hit the hand, because that was the
Wow.
thing that was closest to him. And I was in the room, like in the back, just observing. And I was like, I was really surprised. It happened several times, you know, and it just makes you realize when you come in, you see that gun becomes like, yeah, you know what I'm saying? And that's
Yeah.
what the guy focuses on. And but I think a lot of weapons fighting. I know I do Katori Shinto-ryu, which is a Japanese style of swordsmanship that goes back 600 years. And they're doing in some of their techniques exactly what you're talking about. So you'll see like in the samurai movies where they're doing all these big cuts and taking heads off. And meanwhile, Katori, they move the sword like that much and they've sliced the tendons and the
You got
ligaments.
that whole arm to strike.
Right. And you know, so you'll see that all the time, you know, and in the case of them, they're going for gaps in the armor because the system originally starts as battlefield people wearing armor, right? So you also teach spear.
That is correct.
Okay, so now the spear, is it from learning from your grandfather also?
Yes, and other people,
Okay,
like
so
my uncle, cousins.
okay, so you've done the other martial arts. So have you done any like Chinese spear or Okinawan bow
I've
where
done
you
the
could
bow and I've done the
compare?
staff, Japanese
Okay,
staff and the bow from Chinese. It's moved differently.
okay,
I don't will it like the Chinese or the Japanese
okay,
because it's too much thinking, too much
okay,
kata, too much movement,
okay.
too much waving it around in the air because it's the form.
Right,
But the whole idea of that is to learn every awkward and every move with your weapon.
right,
Yeah. But Apache bow with this with the lance, I'll call it a lance, not a
right.
spear. We don't throw it like you think we do.
Well, like they
It
do in
stays
some of
on
the
the
movies.
horse. It's longer and it's for the buffalo and for animals and even with the enemy. Because then once you throw it, then you have to get off your horse to go get it.
Well, you're also throwing away your weapon.
Absolutely.
So
So if
I'm
you get
assuming on the same
spear,
note, you're not throwing your knife.
no, I don't like to throw my knife,
Yeah, I don't either.
especially if it's $500.
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
lose it in
yeah,
that body if the guys running away with it. So yeah, so you have your spear, you know, you have your all your weapons on you at that time. You got your handgun, your rifle, you got your war club, you have your slingshot. You know, these are all the weapons we usually have. It all depends what you're doing, you know, at that
right.
time,
What the mission is or where you're
what the
going.
mission
What
is.
right.
Absolutely,
So
yeah.
with the spear, are you using it where you're holding near the back end of it for extension,
No,
or do you
no, it's
also
too
use it?
long.
Go
It's
ahead.
too long to hold it from the back, so
Okay.
it's in the middle of the
Okay.
lance. Yeah.
So how long is it?
Oh, it can be pretty. It all depends.
So think even of like when the Europeans, the knights would go jousting,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So you've got this, the Apache lance is much lighter than what they
Right.
use
Right.
because it's meant to just penetrate the bison or whatever you're hunting.
Right.
So it's long, so it's a little unwieldy to do
Yeah.
a lot of fancy
Yeah.
stuff with.
And
Right.
the other reason why it's long is for two reasons. One, the Spaniards, they
Right.
had spears
Right.
on their horse and they used it during battle.
Right.
So that's probably where we got the idea from.
Okay.
And another thing, we also use it to how do I say that? Like if I'm top of a hill and there's a hill down here, we'll slide down it like a pole. So we'll
Okay.
get the spear, we'll stab it on the ground, we'll slide down instead of jumping from like up here to down below.
Right.
You just slide down your spear.
Okay.
So it's pretty long. Some were short and some were long.
So would you say 9 feet, 12 feet?
I would say longer than that. Right?
Again, it
'Cause,
depends.
yeah,
Yeah.
because the one we have in the museum is pretty long. I never did measure that.
That one's about with the tip is about 8 feet.
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
So I
Is
know in
there-
Okinawa, my Kobudo sensei handed me a 9-foot staff. and he
Okay.
told me to do the same one of the same kata, but now with a 9 foot staff as opposed to the 6 foot.
You just hope you had a good silly.
Well, he did luckily, but it's very interesting, right?
Oh,
And in the Chen tradition, the Chinese martial art I do, the Chen Tai Chi, they also have staff, but obviously it's spear. When they say staff, they're also talking
okay.
spear. And it's same thing. It's long. It's about 10 feet long. I have one here in the school. Um, and there's not as many techniques. It's much simpler. There's
Mhm.
not as much, there's not a lot of fancy stuff,
No. Did
you
you
know.
bring it up because you saw the article I did on the spear?
So when I was searching around online, by the way, I'll tell you how this came about.
Okay.
Because, okay. So I'm interviewing someone a couple of weeks ago who I was interviewing for the second time. And recently I had a guy on who does Maori martial arts from New Zealand.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And then last week I interviewed a guy who does Filipino martial arts. So my friend says to me, he says, "Oh, do you know anybody that does Native American martial arts?" And in the back of my head, I remembered seeing something, right? And I said, I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to look into it. So I I went into Google and I think I put in Apache Knife Fight. I think for some reason that stuck in my head. And you came up and I said, "Oh, here's the guy. Yeah, I remember this guy, right?" I said, "All right, let me so then I friended you on Facebook and I send you a message. And next thing you know, you're on, right? And I got to tell you, a lot of my students and a lot of other people are really looking forward to this one because it's an area that most people, even most, what martial arts people know anything about Native American fighting techniques? I mean, a lot of them don't. They don't. And, they have these ideas. What do you have ideas from? You have ideas from movies, right? Okay, but, again, movies, it's like martial arts movies. They're movies. That's not real
This
martial
is true.
arts.
This is a good story. And I'm gonna let Robin explain this one. So this is how Robin found me.
Okay, cool.
So you know what I'm getting at? Okay,
Okay.
go ahead.
All right. So I've been doing martial arts most of my life, and,
Okay.
and Japanese and Chinese and different stuff. But I have Celtic heritage,
Me too.
and
Go ahead.
at one time, family lore was that we had Native American as well.
Okay.
Haven't been able to prove that yet, but I wondered what would have been like if the Celts and the Native Americans, which they did get along pretty well, similar warrior culture,
Right.
family, everything. What if they had combined their warrior knowledge and created a system? So, with a buddy of mine, we created Lav Batalan, which means hand, stick, blade, and it's a combination of Celtic and Native American.
Okay.
But most of what I was able to find was articles and historical stuff from the Spanish and stuff. And then I came across Robert's name, but he was living in Arkansas at the time.
Okay.
So I thought, well, that's going to be hard to track him down and train with him. And then we went to something at the Martial Art History Museum,
Okay.
and I looked in the audience and I recognized him.
Okay.
And 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 after the event, we went over there and, hey, you're Robert Redfeather. And he's like, well, yeah, what do you want to know?
Yeah.
Uh,
Do I owe you money?
so we basically forced him out of retirement to teach us. My buddy Morgan Ferry. I thought you were plugged in.
I am plugged in.
Let me check it.
Okay.
Anyway, so
I'll check it. You talk about
that's
I'll check
okay.
it.
You check it.
Okay.
That's how we discovered Robert, and just kept training with him and basically forcing him to stay with it, so that we could learn his way of teaching and everything else, and it's worked out pretty well. So now we have incorporated Apache Knife into our system.
Okay. Well, it's interesting because you can actually look up stories of even like, we hear the Japanese warriors, the deadliest warrior in the history of the world, right? And but meanwhile, you can pull up stories where European swordsmen fought samurai and killed a samurai. And, I say all the time, there's no such thing as the deadliest martial art. There's only deadly men. There's men that are
Yep.
dangerous, right?
Yep.
So,
Well,
I mean, it doesn't matter, if a guy is dangerous, he's dangerous, right? So So it's funny. I did my ancestry a few years ago, and my last name's Calandra. So everybody, and I figured I'm more Italian, right? And I'm mostly Irish and Scottish. So it's
Funny
just
how that
funny.
works out, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
funny. Along with about 6 or 7 other things. So I'm a real, I got all kinds of stuff,
Yep.
you know.
Just like a lot
So,
of us.
Yeah. So
so
when during
yeah,
that time when Robin was telling me what he was trying to do, I wasn't sure about it because a lot of people tried to use Apache Knife for their own game, or reuse it, or abuse it, or steal it, or whatever they want to do. There's a lot of martial arts out there. Well, that's the wrong word I want to say. There's a lot of native art, warrior arts out there. We just don't want to teach it to outsiders.
right,
So every system is different from each family or from
right,
each clan.
right,
So I didn't make anything up, and a lot of people think I did. All I was trying to tell them is my grandfather would teach me, and I would ask him, as a martial artist, I would ask him, what's the name of this technique?
right,
And what did he do, Robin?
Smack you and
He
say,
would smack me and say, this, do it.
right,
Why you want to know a name for everything? Because
right,
the martial arts, we break it apart.
right,
We have a name for everything.
right.
So for me to teach people, I had to come up with names to teach people,
Okay,
but the techniques are all there. They just
right,
didn't have names.
right.
So I gave it a name so I can teach people. And it's just funny. But
Well,
it worked
isn't it,
well.
so what I was gonna say was because I know the one art I teach, it's very close to dying out. The one Japanese art I teach. There's
Oh,
very few people practicing it.
what is it?
It's Sosui Shitsuru Jiu-Jitsu. So it's an art out of Fukuoka, Japan. It's empty hand jiu-jitsu, obviously. It
Okay.
was founded around 1650. So I trained with the 16th headmaster in Fukuoka, and they also have Ei Jitsu, which is swordsmanship,
nice.
but it's not Ei Do. It's not the posing sword. It's combat.
Jitsu is battle. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
I have a school, my old school in New York. They're still training it. I'm actually training a guy now in Great Britain, which makes me very happy. So hopefully he'll keep doing it. Um, but is that a concern of yours that, you know, is there a concern not just with you, but anybody else within your culture that is concerned that, well, if I don't teach this to somebody, it's gonna disappear?
Well, they still don't want me to teach outsiders. They only want me to teach family.
Okay.
But families sometimes are just not interested. They have other things that they
Well,
want to do, right?
it's modern times. That's the same issue
Yes.
with this style of jujitsu. I
Yes.
mean, they're
Yeah.
just not
And if I didn't teach people, we would not be having this conversation
right,
right now.
right.
So I like the way it's going so far. I like the way it's growing. Other people are using it, but they're not giving me the credit, which is okay. You can't police it.
Yeah, I saw somebody else pop up on a YouTube video. It wasn't you, but the guy was saying he was doing Apache knife, a younger guy.
We know who that is.
Okay, yeah, I don't remember the guy's name, but I'm
Yeah.
just saying, like, I looked at it and I was like, but listen,
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
taught him. So after one seminar, then he did his own thing. He went his own direction, did his own
Well,
thing.
now he claims that it's White Mountain Apache.
Is
right.
he really?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Well, listen, I've taught seminars where a guy shows up to one seminar and then all of a sudden he's my student. And
Yeah,
now,
it
my
happens.
photo's on his website and he's claiming
Yeah.
he's been with me and I'm like, "What? Huh?"
Yeah. Yeah.
Sadly, it's just the nature of the beast, I think. We
Probably so.
try to protect ourselves as much as we can, but there's always going to be those people that, and again, it's
Yeah.
part of it, it's human nature, right? It's the
Yeah.
people, we talk about this all the time. A lot of martial arts people are not good people. I mean, let's be honest, a lot of them are not. Um, and a lot of it, it's all about money, right? That's why having this setup here, where it's on my property, I don't have any rent, right? So if I have
Okay.
3 students, great. If I have 300 students, great. But I don't really care. And right now, I only
Right.
have about 6 students, so it's not like I'm, making $1
Well, the
million.
great thing is you also get to pick what you want to teach as well.
Well, that's the other thing that,
Yeah.
and even in New York, where I had a commercial, where I had a storefront, which is very expensive to have in New York, and it's still there. My student runs it. One of the things I had to teach him and make sure he understood when I left was, listen, with a dojo, you want addition by subtraction. So a guy comes in, he joins the school, he's not a right fit, he's a problem. You can't think, well, if I tell him to get lost, I'm making X amount of money less. I said, because if he stays, 3 other people are going to quit because he's an asshole, right? And so, so he learned that right away, and that's what he's lived by too. And the school runs much better. So yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm not interested. Usually they walk into my school, they see the police stuff all on the wall. So if they're a criminal, they look at that and they're like, okay, this isn't the place for me. And it's the
Not a
same in New
great
York
fit.
because the guy that took over my school in New York is a former lieutenant. So it'd be the same thing. He's got his police stuff up. Oh, okay, yeah, I should probably go down the block to the other guy. He'll take anybody, right? So how often are you teaching now?
I teach every other month or almost every other day. Robin has students. I have students. I do
Okay.
seminars. I do private lessons.
Okay.
Most of my problem my students have is fighting with their left hand, walking forward, walking backwards. Because I tell people, if you cannot fight backwards, you're not going to be a good fighter. You have to know to punch and fight backwards, just as well as forward.
So, it's funny. I have a chronic knee condition, but it's not from martial arts. I was born with my kneecap sits on a weird angle. And I saw this guy on Joe Rogan's podcast called the Knees Over Toes Guy.
Great guy.
Great guy. Okay. And I started doing those exercises. And one of the things he says is the first thing you do is you walk backwards.
Okay.
So I do it here in my dojo. I just do
it's
laps.
good for the memory as well.
So, and also I this is a big thing in China. In China, they do this. They've been doing this for 1,000 years. But I got to the point where now I run backwards inside the dojo. I'm doing laps running, and I'm going to be 62. So it's not like I'm, that young anymore. Right. But it is amazing. I turned some of my friends onto it, and they tried walking backwards, and they reaching out to me the next day saying, man, I can't believe how sore my legs are. I said, yeah, because the muscles that you're using the muscles in a completely different way. You've never used them like that before. But it's funny you talk about moving backwards like that. Because I'm out here running laps backwards out here.
Well, Robin only has till 4 o'clock, and I have plenty of time. So Robin's going to leave us at 4, right?
Okay.
I can keep going.
Okay.
Yeah, we could we'll probably wrap up right around there. So, so it won't be, So let me ask you give more details on the system. So no forms?
No, because it's not karate.
Yeah, that's fine. No, that's why
I do have a similar well, I don't want people to think it's a form. The star pattern is knife movements 13.
Okay.
And then there's second pattern of a star pattern, which goes into more.
Okay.
So it's about 125 star patterns, but I don't consider it as a form. It's a way of moving your blade of awkward positions.
So would you say that's kind of your basic blueprint for people to learn how to cut and wield the blade?
No.
Okay.
No. When I teach, see, that's weird. When you're cutting, I hate to say people, I hate to say the K word. I hate that. When you're cutting, you're actually helping the person. Okay. When you're stabbing, you're not helping anybody. So you have a choice. Either I can cut him or I can stab him. But the stabbing is the last resort because I'm attacking the hand.
Right.
I'm going to do cutting. Right. So we stay away from the body as much as possible, because if you go towards the body, then you're committed.
Okay.
If you're away from the arm, you're not committed, and you have different directions you can run or get away from.
Okay. And so when you talk about these patterns that you do, so do they also include footwork to introduce people to the footwork?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. People have trouble switching as they're using their knife.
Right.
We move right to left. We switch with our feet as we're moving for distance and closing up the distance, and then moving different angles. Robin always says, I didn't know he watched me that much, but he says I'm moving my feet before I actually use my hands. I didn't realize that. I was going either the right or the left,
right,
or I was backing up or switching my feet as the person was attacking.
And you make people work both hands?
Yes, absolutely.
Yep.
Okay. And you're always one knife and the open hand, so the hand you can use that hand
to
trap.
You gotta use that. We call that a live hand. You have to use it. It's for punching, for grabbing the eyes, the throat. If you don't use it at all, you're gonna get stabbed and cut.
Okay, so you're not ever using two knives?
I do, but I don't teach that. I do it myself. Robin probably does himself. We do it to demonstrate, but I haven't taught anybody really how to do that.
Okay, is that part of the tradition though?
tradition
that
Meaning-
like from your grandfather?
Oh, no,
Okay.
no, because you got one hand free because you want
Right.
to use your handgun, your rifle, or you're willing the horse or the
Right.
shield.
Right.
So you always want one hand empty so you can use it for anything. Pick up dirt, throw the dirt, stuff like that.
Yeah, there's even I just was talking to someone who does a particular style of weaponry on Okinawa where they, you know what the sai is, right? So he uses in their style they do a one-handed sai kata, and the other hand is used to what we're talking about here, where it's deflect, seize, whatever we're doing, because the sai was a law enforcement weapon on Okinawa.
Okay.
And in China also. There's some historical photos of guys actually, of law enforcement guys. Obviously, they didn't look like us in uniform. Okay, they look like just regular people, but they have sai in their hand. So it's just interesting because again, in modern times, we see all the sai kata are one in each hand. But in this system, which comes from a police tradition on Okinawa, they have kata where they're only using one sai and the other hand is being used in conjunction with that weapon, similar to what you're talking about with the Apache knife. It's just
Right.
interesting how different cultures.
To use two knives. I mean, we use one in the mountain grip for catching,
Right.
and then one for striking.
Okay.
But very rarely I'll teach anybody how to use two.
Okay.
They have trouble just using one.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just curious. I'm just trying to find out what it all encompasses. Because
absolutely.
again, myself, I don't know a lot about Native American martial arts. I mean, I know some things that I've picked up in some history books and different things, but again, I've got two guys sitting in front of me that this is what they do. And I'm sure after this comes out, there'll probably be some questions that people will be like, "Oh, you should have asked this, or you should have asked that."
Well, Robert's a history buff. He knows
Okay.
all about Native history.
So think about this. Despite what you see in the movies and stuff, the knife fighting with the natives was not about dueling.
Right.
It's battlefield art.
Right.
So ideally, you would just cut the person and keep moving so that your cousin or uncle coming up behind will
take care
also stab him or cut him. Oh. And you just keep moving through the battlefield, leaving as much damage as possible in the way. And why would I stop and duel with this guy on the battlefield when his cousin could come up and stab me in the back?
Right.
So in Katori Shinto-ryu, it's the same philosophy. So in Katori Shinto-ryu, if you're fighting a man with armor, he has gaps in his armor. So if you're on the battlefield, again, you're looking to slice or just cut in that gap and now move on to the next guy. You're not, because again, you don't have time. You cut him, hopefully, that stuns him or whatever. Someone else can finish him off or you're moving on to the next guy. So it's interesting, right? Because battlefield combat's very different from a self-defense system. Karate is more a civilian self-defense system, right? It's not something that's a combative art, right? But the jiu-jitsu I teach, the Katori Shinto-ryu I teach, those are combat martial arts taught to military guys, right? So the philosophy is very different, and it makes total sense. It's the same thing. You're just gonna stay on one guy when you've got all hell breaking loose on a battlefield. You've got to have eyes all over the place as you're moving and doing things.
Guerrilla warfare is totally different. That's why we'll wound one person, get away to split up the troops. They'll be chasing one Apache, and that same Apache is going to circle around and take care of the people who are left behind.
Right.
Yeah. Guerrilla warfare is amazing.
So I'm just curious. So within the training, was there ever where, like within a battlefield, that two Apache would go back to back if they were surrounded by people and fight in that manner? I'm asking this for a reason.
I have never personally seen that done because I'm too young, but I'm sure it probably did happen during the battlefield. We're always outnumbered as an Apache people.
Right.
It was never an even match, you know. So I can see that happening.
Okay.
That's what we're called, the Tigers.
Okay.
Why, you're not going to have pitched battles because the attrition rate would be too high.
Right.
So it's shooting from cover, moving away, moving through, damaging as much as possible, get away.
By the time you did see us, usually you're dead.
Hit and run.
Right.
Yeah, because we would shoot you from a distance. We wouldn't actually get that close to you and actually want a knife fight. Knife fighting is actually to solve problems with other tribes.
Right. Right. It's also last resort, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're on the battlefield, you're down to your knife. Probably not good.
Gone wrong.
Right. It's like Sugino Sensei, my Katori Shintoru teacher. I asked him, they have jujitsu in Katori Shintoru. And I said, Sensei, what about the jujitsu? And he says, oh, it's okay. But if you're on the battlefield and you're down to using jujitsu, you're probably going to be dead. Because you've lost your weapons and now you're just down to fighting with your hands against armed opponents. You're probably not going to survive, you know?
But since I started teaching them, people always comparing me to Filipino all the time until they take my class. And then they realize, well, you're right. It's nothing like Filipino.
Right.
They don't know that till they actually show up.
Right.
And do the course.
Yeah, we had a Filipino instructor. He's really good, really fast. And he admitted to us after his first seminar, I thought I was going to come up and skunk you guys.
Yeah, he did say that.
But after we stabbed him over and over again, he realized that there was error. And since then, he has been coming to pretty much every seminar.
Now he's a student.
Yeah.
Good.
But what he found amazing was our age. Because he's what, 20 or 30? He's in his 30s, right?
Well, I think he's still in his late 30s.
Yeah, he's young. And then when I told him, I'm 67 and Robin's older than me, he's like, what? They're doing all the hard work. We're not moving like people jump around like jumping beans or like a squirrel. They're just like all over the place when they're fighting us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I think too, people come in with preconceived notions. And if they only know one way, if you've only been trained in one discipline, you're kind of locked into, well, this is the way, right? Mm-hmm. And then sometimes you're exposed to something else and you're like, oh, wait a second, there's another way, you know? Yeah. So like even myself, like I teach all these arts, but I've trained in a bunch of other arts, right? So I've come to the conclusion that I come to everything with an open mind because there's a lot of good stuff out there.
Oh.
A lot of good stuff out there.
For your audience, just about everything that we've talked about here is in Red's book.
Hold the book up. And I'm going to put a link.
Always pushing the book.
I'm going to put it's Apache Knife Fighting the Wind. Is that what it says?
Fight like the wind.
Fight like the wind. Okay.
Meaning you don't want to be solid on your feet. You want to be moving like the wind.
Right. I'm going to, I'll post a link to that in the description. Sure. I'll also post a link to the website. So if people want to get in touch with you.
The main thing that people always tell me about the cover, they said, I wouldn't want to train with you because look at the way you're holding your knife. And I go, it's for the magazine so they can see the knife. I don't fight like that.
Yeah.
It's just a picture.
Yeah, I've got pictures of myself doing things where I'm like, it's a photo. It's not, it's and even sometimes I'll pose for a photo and the photographer will go, oh, stand like this. And I'm like, all right, I stand like that. I don't get, again, like I said, people are overly critical. And usually those people that are overly critical, like this channel, for instance, right? You know, I get a lot of good comments, so which I appreciate. And then I get some internet trolls. And then I'll go and check out that guy's channel and I look at his posts and everything is a negative comment. He's never posted one nice thing about anybody. And I'm like, okay, you see, this is what makes him feel good, knocking others.
Now, would you like to ask Robin a question since he's a student?
Sure.
And he's looking at it a different perspective.
So Robin, what do you like about it?
Well, it was not quite what I expected.
Okay.
Like I said, I've been doing martial arts for a long time.
Okay.
And
so what martial arts had you done?
So for law enforcement, I was a Krav Maga for law enforcement instructor. Okay. I've done Wing Chun.
Okay.
I've done various types of karate. I moved around a lot as a kid.
Okay.
Had my own Taekwondo school for a while.
Okay.
I've been doing Bujinkan Budo Taijutsu.
Okay.
For almost 20 years, or more than 20 years actually. And been exposed to Filipino knife fighting, Pinjak Silat, a lot of different knife fighting stuff as well.
So you come from a very varied background.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so when we talked to Robert and came to his first seminar. And says, well, I'm pretty good. I've sparred with other people and done all right. And yeah, got my butt kicked over and over and over again, and had to adjust my my footwork and my movements, and
probably your way of thinking a little bit.
Yeah, because I've done a lot of sword work as well, both Japanese and European.
Okay.
And again, pretty confident in my abilities there. But again, the footwork is such that I have even adapted that into Scottish sword work.
Okay.
And I think it's probably what the early Scots used footwork like this.
Okay.
In their battles and stuff. So it's been enough that I have stuck it out, even when he would tell us that he had taught us everything and he tried to get rid of us.
Yeah, I did try. I said, it's time for you to leave the nest. He wouldn't go.
So no, because every time we spar with you, you pull something else out that gets us, and so we know that you have more to teach us.
But I always think I taught them.
Right, right. You teach. I'm the same way. I'll go to. I'm going back to New York to do seminars again. I'll show something, and a guy who's with me 40 years comes up to me and says, "I've never seen that before," and I'm like, "Of course I've taught that before." And they're like, "Listen, I've never seen that before." And I'm like, all right, I guess you weren't here that night. Or, again, we think we've shown our students everything. Yes, and they're like, no, I remember I missed a month. So I guess I missed when you showed that stuff. So I watched some of the videos. Is it safe to say that the videos I'm seeing on YouTube are barely scratching the surface?
Barely scratching the surface.
Yep.
We do that just to like an introduction to Apache Knife mostly.
Right.
Let people know who we are, but I don't want to throw too much out there for free.
Yeah, listen, I hear you.
Because then I'm going to have other people doing the same thing, and
And as you know, even an experienced martial artist, where you're going to pick stuff up, you're not going to learn from a video as well as in person.
Yeah,
I teach a lot. Pick up the nuances.
Right, I teach a lot of Zoom classes, and a lot of the people I teach Zoom classes to fly out here. They'll fly out here for a week of one-on-one training. Then when we go back to Zoom, when they go back to wherever they live, now this has changed, right? Because they understand, oh, now I know what he means when he says that.
Right. That's why we won't let students teach seminars, because they don't understand Apache culture yet. Right. So once you understand the culture and people ask you questions, then you can start teaching seminars. But right now, let's teach your own students.
So I don't have your book. So the book, is it also go into the culture, or is it strictly the knife stuff?
No, it's culture.
Oh, is it? Okay.
I'll pick it up. I want it to be just another knife book. I'll pick it up. Culture in it. I wanted some history in it. Yeah. And the second book I'm working on is going to even have more history and more on tracking, more on knife fighting, more on the spear. Okay, so listen, when you do the second book, reach out for me, and we'll have you on again, and we'll advertise your book. I mean, look. By the time you come on again, I'll probably have 20,000 subscribers. And I do know for a fact, when I wish we had questions from the other subscribers they want to ask us, because I see people on YouTube and always asking questions, and I won't touch it because they're trying to, what do you call that? Fight with me with the keyboard.
Yeah. I don't
want to do that.
I don't do it either. If someone asks me a legitimate question, and I'll respond to them.
Yeah. But if my own people do the same thing to me. One person asked me, do you know why I wear war paint? And I'm going, why would you ask me that when you already know why? Because you do it yourself.
Right.
Why would you ask me something you already know? Well,
so see, here's the thing. That's one of the things when I decided to do this. So when I started this podcast, it was me sitting talking about martial arts. And one of my former police partners suggested I do it. And I'm sitting by myself for 20 minutes talking. And thinking, I'll do the first one, no one will watch, I'll never do it again. Okay, well, that wasn't the case, right? Okay, now I got to come up with a second topic for another one, right? And then I decided, I got this one martial arts book that I really liked, and I said, oh, I'm going to do a book review. And I bought the book. It's not like the guy sent it to me. And I reviewed it, and people sent me screenshots of them with the book, like that they bought the book based on my recommendation. And I was like, okay. So now one of my friends is Patrick McCarthy. So I don't know if you're familiar with Patrick McCarthy.
Is he a law enforcement?
He's not law enforcement.
And
He wrote the biggest selling martial arts book of all time, the Bubishi. He translated the Bubishi. Okay. And he's got a lot of martial arts books. Very, very famous. So I'm friends with him. We know each other a long time. I just was with him on Okinawa a couple of months ago. But anyway, he was coming out with a new book. I says, hey, why don't you come on a podcast and we'll talk about the book? So he was the first guy I interviewed. Well, a lot of people got the book. So then I said, okay, well, now I can use this as a vehicle to help these guys that are writing these books. Because again, like what I realized is, where does someone that's writing a book, whether it's Apache knife fighting or a biography of this obscure martial arts master, where do they go where they can get like-minded people to actually get the book, where they can talk about the book and maybe they'll sell some books? So now the podcast has also become that, where I have these authors on and interview them, always put a link, and a lot of people, will invest in the book. So I had one guy send me a private message saying, stop having these authors on. I'm spending money every week because they're buying books, and then now I've been lucky. A lot of the authors are sending me books. So they're sending me books to review. And if it's, it's a new book, I have them on and we talk about it. And it's been great. So when you finish your new book and it comes out, let me know and we'll get you on again. And we'll talk about it and we'll push it. And hopefully you'll sell some books and get out there to more people. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate both you guys coming on. I really do. Yeah. This has been great. I learned a lot. I mean, one of the things with this podcast I tell people is I don't really care if anybody watches it. I get to interview people that I have an interest in, right? So if I don't know a subject and I can get a guy that agrees to be interviewed, for me, it's great because I can sit, ask questions, and I learn stuff.
You actually didn't ask that many questions.
Well, I think I asked more than you think. I mean, I think you've been very informative as far as what you do, okay. But if you want to add, feel free to add more.
I'm not the talker. Robin's the talker.
Buy the book. So
yeah,
there's a lot of stuff in the book. The videos are online. I've posted like all the videos that we've done on my YouTube channel, which is the Love About the Lawn YouTube channel.
I have some personal stuff in the book about some of the things I've done and in my life besides the history. And I got pictures of my grandparents, the ones who taught me. Okay. They're in the book. I dedicate the book kind of to them. I'm pretty much on that.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
I'm going to definitely have to buy that book. So now I'll be spending more money, but it's okay.
It's on Amazon.
I know. I saw it. I said, that's where I'm going to go and get it. So, listen, I really appreciate you guys coming on.
Well, thank you for having us.
And listen, again, the new book comes out. Make sure you reach out.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And I look forward to talking to you again.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Oh,
take care.
So I hope you enjoyed that interview. I enjoyed it. I learned a lot. It's very interesting talking about these different cultural martial arts, which I think a lot of us don't necessarily are either aware of or have an understanding of it all. So it's kind of cool. I've actually asked for Robert's book for Father's Day, so hopefully my wife will purchase me that. Really enjoyed it. And again, look forward to talking to Robin in the future about the Celtic traditional martial arts that he studies. I will be in New York, the first weekend in August. So the seminars will be from July 31st to August 2nd. You can contact my student, James Waller. You can look it up. It's on Facebook. I'll put a link to it in the description again to my seminars. Hope to see some of you that are members of the channel or subscribers to the channel. We had some people come and attend the last seminars I did back in January. So hopefully we'll see some more people at this one. All right. Again, appreciate you all. Please click that like, share, subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next podcast. Take care.